There was a woman. She didn't live a life filled with riches or ease, no, but she lived with something greater, love. A love that could move mountains, but chose instead to stand still and wait. She waited for him. Every sunrise, she opened her door just a crack, hoping she might see his shadow on the horizon. Every night she sat by that old window, watching the stars, because he once told her they shared the same sky. No matter how far apart they were. Slow breath. Lean in. People told her to let go, move on, live. They said she was foolish. They said time was slipping away, like sand through fingers you can't close fast enough. But she wasn't trying to hold time. She was holding hope. And let me tell you something about hope. It's heavier than it looks. It weighs on your chest in the dark. It holds your breath hostage when the silence stretches too long. But she carried it anyway, because she believed he was coming back. And if he didn't, if he never returned, that wasn't her worry. Her worry was, what if he comes back and I'm not there to welcome him home? Pause, lower the voice, slow the pace. So she stayed, she waited. Her hair turned silver, her hands grew tired, her bones ached, but her heart stayed young, alive with the rhythm of a love that refused to die. Soft smile. She waited until her last breath, and when it came, she whispered his name, soft like a prayer, strong like a promise. Pause. Some say she wasted her life, but I say she spent it on something real. Something pure. She lived for love. And if you ever find someone who wait for you like that, hold them. Don't make them wait. Time has a way of changing things. The seasons shift, faces age, buildings crumble, and memories fade. We live in a world that tells us everything has an expiration date. Feelings dull, people drift apart, and the connections we once believed were unbreakable become distant echoes. That's the story we're told, and sometimes we believe it. But there's a deeper truth for those who've experienced a bond so powerful, so rooted, that not even the relentless ticking of the clock can wear it down. Time can't diminish true connection. It can't touch something that was never bound by it in the first place. You see, when two souls find each other in a way that goes beyond circumstance, beyond convenience, they create something that lives outside of time. It's not about how often they see each other or how many words they speak. It's not about calendars or distance. True connection lives in silence, just as much as it lives in laughter. It's there when years have passed and you hear their voice again, and it's like not a second has gone by. There's no dust to shake off, no awkwardness to work through. It's as if they were always with you, even in their absence. There was a woman who understood this, whether she realized it or not. She waited for him until her last breath, because that connection was something time couldn't undo. It wasn't rooted in the days they spent together or the moments they lost. It was rooted in something that didn't care how much time passed. She believed in what they had, not because she was stubborn or naive, but because her heart knew a truth that her mind didn't always understand. What's real doesn't break down over time. It grows. It strengthens. Even in the waiting, even in the silence, that connection was alive. Time makes people doubt. It makes them question their hearts. It whispers in your ear that maybe it's been too long, maybe they've forgotten, maybe you should too. That's how time plays tricks on us. But for the people who are connected in a way that goes beyond this world, those whispers fade. They don't get louder, they get quieter. Because you come to understand something simple but powerful. Time doesn't control love. It doesn't command loyalty. It doesn't dictate the terms of the heart. True connection has a rhythm of its own. It isn't rushed. It doesn't panic. It doesn't say it's been too long. It says, I'm still here. It waits. It trusts. And that trust is stronger than any clock. This woman, in her quiet strength, carried that rhythm inside her. She lived her life with it. She didn't need to count the days or measure the distance. She didn't let time steal her hope, because her connection to him wasn't something that faded with the years. It was something that deepened. There's a funny thing about time and love. People think love happens quickly, that it's always urgent and fast-moving, but the kind of love that stands the test of time, real love, doesn't rush. It settles in like roots of an old tree, slow, quiet, unshakable. And when the storms come, and they always do, that connection doesn't break. It holds. It bends, maybe, but it doesn't. Some folks spend their lives looking for this kind of connection, and some are lucky enough to find it, even if for a short time. But the ones who understand what it really means, who understand that time is powerless against it, those people love in a way that never grows old. They love with a patience that doesn't wear thin. They love with a faith that doesn't fade. That woman, sitting by her window, waiting for him until the very end, understood something most people don't. She wasn't waiting for his return to prove something. She was honoring the connection they had. Whether he walked back through that door or not, their bond was alive inside her. Time couldn't change that. It never could. When you love someone with everything you have, when your soul finds its match, it isn't measured in hours, days, or years. It's measured in moments that stretch beyond time. A look, a promise, a memory that feels as real today as it did decades ago. That's true connection. That's what makes time irrelevant. She didn't count the years. She didn't mark the days on a calendar. She held him in her heart, steady as the stars in the sky. And whether he came home or not, whether they ever saw each other again in this life or the next, she knew something no one could take from her. Time can't diminish true connection. It only makes it clearer. It only makes it stronger. And in the quiet moments, when the world around her grew still, she could still feel him. As if he never left. Because when love is real, it doesn't leave, it stays. Love is often spoken of in moments. The first glance, the first touch, the first time someone says, "I love you." We tend to think of it as something that belongs to life, something that's tied to breath and heartbeat, something that ends when we do. But there's a kind of love that goes further. A love that doesn't obey the rules of this world. A love that endures beyond life itself. When someone truly loves, it plants something deep within them. It's not just emotion, it's not just feeling. It becomes a part of their spirit, woven into who they are. You can't pull it loose even if you wanted to. And some people carry that love with them even when everything else begins to fade. Even when time strips them of youth, strength, and all the things they thought made them who they were. That love stays. And when life runs its course and the last breath leaves their body, that love doesn't leave with it. It lingers, it holds on, it lives. She waited for him until her last breath. Some people would say that's the end of the story. She's gone now. Time ran out. But they don't understand the power of a love like hers. What she carried wasn't something that death could touch. What she felt wasn't something that needed a body to stay alive. Love like that doesn't stop because life does. It crosses the line we think is final. It moves beyond it. It becomes something eternal. There's a reason we hold on to the memories of those we've loved and lost. It's not just nostalgia. It's not just missing them. It's because their love left something behind. A piece of them is still here, still alive in the way they loved us and the way we loved them back. That's why you can close your eyes and feel them. That's why you can stand in a quiet room and swear you're not alone. It's not your imagination. It's the truth of love that outlasts life. She believed in him. She believed in what they had. And even as her body weakened, as the years wore on her frame, her heart stayed strong. Because she wasn't waiting for the end. She wasn't counting down the moments. She was holding on to something that had already proven itself unshakable. Whether he came back or not, whether they found each other again in this world or the next, she knew what they had was real. Real enough to last forever. Real enough to go with her when she left this place. Some people live their entire lives without knowing that kind of love. Others are lucky enough to experience it once, to feel its weight and its grace, and when they do, they understand something deep in their bones. That kind of love doesn't get buried in the ground. It doesn't fade with the setting sun. It rises, it stays, it walks with you through the veil, and waits on the other side. She took that love with her, and he? Maybe he felt it. Maybe he woke up one morning with her name on his lips and didn't know why. Maybe he looked up at the sky and felt a pull, an ache, like something was missing but not lost. Maybe he carried on with his life, never realizing that the warmth he felt on his darkest days was her love, still holding him, still waiting, even beyond her last breath. We think of death as an ending, but when love is strong enough, it's not. It's a continuation. A different chapter in a story that doesn't finish just because a life does. She lived for him, loved him in silence, in patience, in faith. And when her time came, she didn't let go of that love. She became it. And somewhere, somehow, that love lives on. There's a kind of strength in that, a courage that most people can't even comprehend. To love someone without guarantee, to wait for them without knowing what will come, and to carry that love beyond your final breath, because it was never about life and death in the first place. It was about something greater, something untouchable. She proved it in the way she waited, in the way she believed, in the way her love endured, and now, long after her hands are still, long after her voice is silent, her love remains quiet, steady, unfading. That's the kind of love that changes everything, the kind that doesn't quit, the kind that doesn't end, the kind that lives even after life is gone. People often mistake vulnerability for weakness. They see it as something fragile, something soft, something easily broken. In a world that tells us to be tough, to be guarded, to protect ourselves at all costs, vulnerability can feel like standing in the middle of a storm without shelter. But there is a quiet, unshakable power in being vulnerable. A strength most people never understand because they're too busy building walls to ever experience it. She waited for him until her last breath. And every day she waited, she opened herself to hope. She exposed her heart to the possibility of pain. She risked disappointment. She stood there day after day, year after year, knowing full well that what she was waiting for might never come. And yet she waited. That's not weakness. That's courage. That's strength that refuses to wear armor, that refuses to harden. That's vulnerability in its purest, most powerful form. It takes nothing to shut down, to close your heart off, to stop feeling. It's easy to say, I won't get hurt because I won't care. But it takes everything inside you to care anyway, to love anyway, to stay open to the possibility that you might be left standing there with nothing but your own hope in your hands. That's not easy. That's not soft. That's bravery. She didn't hide from her feelings. She didn't pretend not to love him anymore. She didn't pretend to stop hoping just because it hurt some days. No, she stood there with all of it. The waiting, the wondering, the ache. She lived inside that vulnerability, and that made her strong in a way the world couldn't understand. Most people think strength is about holding on tightly, keeping everything controlled. But real strength is in the letting go, in the surrender, in saying, here I am, take me as I am. I'll risk it. When you open yourself up, when you show the world your heart, your true heart, you take a chance. You let people see your dreams. You let them see your hope. And with that comes risk. Risk that they won't understand. Risk that they'll walk away. Risk that they'll break what you offered them. But when you do it anyway, when you stay soft in a hard world, you are stronger than you'll ever know. She stayed soft. She stayed hopeful. Every morning she opened the door and let the world in, no matter how many mornings passed without him on the other side of it. Every night she let herself dream, even when the dreams ended in tears. And in doing that, she showed a strength most people don't have the nerve to live. She wasn't hardened by time. She wasn't bitter from the waiting. She didn't let the silence make her cold. She chose to stay open, and that choice is where her power lived. People think vulnerability means you're at someone's mercy, that if you open your heart, you're giving someone the chance to break it. And maybe you are. But that's not weakness. That's trust. That's faith. That's love. And love at its core requires vulnerability. It requires you to stand there unguarded with your heart in your hands and say, "This is me, all of me." It's not easy to do that when there's no guarantee you'll get anything in return. But she did it anyway, even as the years passed, even as her hands trembled with age and her voice grew quiet. She stayed open. She kept loving him, kept waiting, kept believing. And in that belief was a strength more powerful than any wall she could have built. Because she wasn't just surviving the years, she was living them fully with her whole heart exposed. We are taught to hide our pain, to bury our longing, to act like we don't need anyone. But she showed that there is nothing braver than needing someone and admitting it. There is nothing braver than loving someone fully and without condition. Vulnerability doesn't make you less, it makes you more human, more alive, more capable of the deep, real connections that make life worth living. She risked everything by waiting. She risked being misunderstood, pitied, even judged. People might have whispered about her behind closed doors. They might have called her foolish. But none of that mattered because she knew something they didn't. Vulnerability was her strength. It was the reason she could love without limit. It was the reason she could wait without bitterness. And it was the reason her love endured even when life didn't give her the answers she wanted. She stood in the open. She felt everything fully. And that takes more strength than most people will ever realize. Vulnerability isn't weakness. It's where true strength is born. In the places where we risk it all for love. In the spaces where we wait and hope and believe. In the quiet moments where we say, I am here. Still open, still loving, no matter what. That's the strength she carried every single day. That's the strength in vulnerability. Hope is not just a feeling. It's not a fleeting thought you have when things are going well. Hope is fuel. It's the fire that keeps the soul alive when everything around you tells you to give up. Hope doesn't need proof. It doesn't require guarantee. It lives in the space between what is and what could be. And for those who carry it like she did, it becomes the reason to keep breathing, keep waiting, keep believing, no matter how long it takes. She waited for him until her last breath. But it wasn't just time she carried, it was hope. It wasn't hope for an easy life or for promises made of paper. It was a deep, quiet hope that stayed steady through years of silence. Hope doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to stand on rooftops and declare itself. Real hope works quietly, deep in the heart, like a pulse that refuses to stop. It beats steady through long nights, through lonely mornings, through days when it seems like nothing will ever change. Hope says, hold on. She woke up every morning with that hope alive inside her. It wasn't always easy. There were days her hands trembled as she opened the curtains, days when her legs felt heavy as she walked to the door. But still, she hoped, not because it made sense, not because she had answers, but because she believed in what they shared. And hope gave her strength to keep waiting, to keep standing, even when the world said it was time to move on. People underestimate hope. They think it's soft. They think it's something people cling to when they have nothing else. But they're wrong. Hope is fierce. It's stubborn. It's what makes you stand up one more time when you've been knocked down 1,000 times before. Hope keeps the soul alive when everything else is fading. It keeps the light on inside you when the rest of the world has gone dark. She could have closed herself off. She could have told herself that waiting was foolish, that believing was a waste of time. She could have shut the door, packed away the memories, and locked up her heart. But she didn't, because hope wouldn't let her. It wouldn't let her give up on him or on the love they had, and that hope became her strength. It became her foundation. Every step she took was powered by it. Every breath, every prayer, every silent moment was carried by the hope that one day he would return. And even as the years passed, even as she grew older and the world changed around her, that hope never left. Some people thought she was clinging to something that was already gone, but they didn't understand. Her hope was not desperate, it wasn't fragile, it was strong because it came from the truth of what they shared. That connection had been real. And when something is real, hope knows it can never truly be lost. Hope gave her life meaning. It gave her purpose. It gave her the strength to get up every morning and wait by the window, even when the streets were empty. Hope made the days bearable and the nights less cold. It warmed her from the inside out. And when people looked at her and saw a woman waiting, what they didn't see was the fire inside her that hope had kept burning all those years. Hope fuels the soul in ways nothing else can. It gives people the courage to keep loving when there's no promise of return. It makes people stay open when it would be easier to shut down. It gives them the will to believe when the world offers no guarantees. That was her power. That was her choice. And it was a choice she made every day. Even as her body weakened, even as time took its toll, her hope remained strong. Because hope doesn't live in the body. It lives in the soul. It's not measured in years or strength or circumstance. It's measured in faith, in trust, in the belief that what matters most is worth waiting for, no matter how long it takes. She held on to that belief, not because she was naive, but because she was strong. And that hope she carried quietly and patiently made her strong in a way most people will never understand. It made her fierce. It made her unshakable. And as she took her last breath, she didn't let go of it. Because hope doesn't end. It travels on. It fuels the soul, not just in life, but beyond it. Hope is the thread that ties life together. It's what keeps the heart beating through sorrow. It's what brings light into dark places. It's what makes love last longer than time. She knew that. She lived that. And in her waiting, in her belief, she showed that hope is not weak or foolish. Hope is everything. It's the very thing that kept her alive, kept her loving, kept her believing until the very end. There's a love that flickers like a candle in the wind, and there's a love that stands like a mountain, unmoved by the storms of life. Unshakable love is not a fair weather feeling. It's not something that thrives only when things are easy, when the sun is shining, when life smiles back. Unshakable love is the kind that holds firm in the cold, in the dark, through seasons of doubt and years of waiting. It's the love that proves itself not by grand gestures, but by quiet endurance, by staying. She waited for him until her last breath, not because she was weak or desperate, but because her love was unshakable. It was built on something deeper than time, deeper than distance. It was built on a connection that did not weaken just because he was far away. Time did not erode what they had. If anything, time proved it. Every sunrise she watched without him. Every night she lay in bed with nothing but memories made her love stronger. People talk about love at first sight, but few talk about love at last breath. The kind of love that lasts that long is something rare, something powerful, something eternal. Unshakable love doesn't demand attention. It doesn't ask to be noticed. It doesn't need applause or recognition. It simply is. It holds on when others let go. It stays when others walk away. She loved him in silence, in patience, in hope that never faded. And that kind of love doesn't diminish. It deepens. It roots itself in the soul and becomes a part of you. It shapes the way you see the world, the way you carry yourself, the way you wait. People often believe time wears love down, that the longer you go without someone, the easier it is to forget. But when love is real, time has the opposite effect. It doesn't weaken it, it refines it. It strips away all the small things that don't matter and leaves behind something pure. What she felt for him was not bound by days or years. It was tied to something unmeasured. It was tied to forever. And so she waited and loved and believed, even as the seasons changed, even as the world spun on, without him beside her. Unshakable love doesn't get tired. It doesn't look for shortcuts. It doesn't keep score. It is patient, not because it has to be, but because it wants to be. She waited because that love was enough. It filled the space where loneliness could have lived. It warmed her where bitterness might have crept in, and the passing of time only proved to her that her heart had chosen well. She didn't question it. She didn't second-guess herself. She stood on what she knew was real. Many people confuse endurance with stubbornness. They think holding on is a refusal to move forward. But unshakable love is not stuck in the past. It's anchored in a truth that is as alive today as it was the day it began. She didn't live in yesterday. She lived in the enduring power of love that was as strong in the present as it ever was. And every day she woke up, she made a choice to continue loving with an open heart. No matter how many days had passed, time tested her love, life tested her heart. There were days when the waiting was heavy, when silence felt endless. But even in those moments, she chose love. Not a love that needed to be constantly fed by presence or words, but a love that had been fed long ago by something deep and lasting. Love that had roots, and because it had roots, it stood firm. When you love like that, you don't need a calendar to tell you how long it's been. You don't measure it in days or years. You measure it in faith, in loyalty, in the strength to keep your heart open, even when the world around you tells you to close it. She never closed her heart. Even in the waiting, her love. And when her time came and she took her last breath, she didn't leave that love behind. It was still with her. It had become who she was. It had shaped her life. It had given her strength. She was proof that unshakable love stands the test of time, not because it resists time, but because it embraces it, moves through it, and outlasts it. Love like hers doesn't disappear. It doesn't end. It leaves an imprint, something felt even after the person is gone. That love is still standing. It's still alive. Because unshakable love, the kind that holds on through years of waiting, through silence, through separation, is the kind of love that time can't touch. And in the end, it's the kind of love that proves itself eternal.